Hey folks, welcome back to my channel, MGBs and other stuff. If you're new here, please consider liking and subscribing. Today's video is called The Ups and Downs of Driving the Niagara Escarpment in my 1963 MGB. So I live in the Niagara region, and it's generally, topographically, it's pretty flat. So that's the green blob on the map here. And we're going to start off in the Shorthills, but really all the interesting hills and valleys that we have are generated by the Niagara Escarpment and the rivers, streams, and creeks that have cut their way through it. Located on the southern edge of the Niagara Escarpment, the Shorthills are a jumble of small but steep hills and valleys formed during the last ice age, which ended about 11,000 years ago. The hills and valleys became even more pronounced when a creek, called the 12 Mile, continued and still continues to cut through the sedimentary deposits and glacial till, creating the landscape we see today. I also wanted to mention that today the engine noises that you hear aren't live from the drive. I had a little trouble with a recording setup I had to record muffler noises, so I had to go to a previous video, take some clips and string them all together, so they're not in sync with the gearing and up and down hills, but I prefer the engine noise to music, so I hope it isn't too annoying. I'm also going to put links up to videos that I've found on YouTube from other creators that really show and highlight the features of all the areas that I'm going through. For example, along the escarpment and in this area, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of beautiful waterfalls, ranging from Niagara Falls, if you were going to go all the way to the east, to Balls Falls, the Morningstar Mill waterfalls. So lots of really scenic trails in here and hikes that you can go and see those falls from. And like I said, I'm going to point them out and leave a link to them in the upper right hand corner. And if you have the time, it would be worthwhile, I think, to check them out. Also some seasonal roads in here that are very steep and narrow and gravelly, prone to washouts, but they're very cool. I prefer a modern day driver to explore those ones though. So as I climb the last part of Hollow Road, I'm going to make a hard left and start heading west on Holland Road. So there's still a little bit of topography here, but really I'm out of the Shorthills and now heading out towards what most of the Niagara Peninsula is like, very flat land. So this is one of my favorite parts of driving in the Shorthills, is how close the trees are to the road, and I call them tree tunnels as they overhang. It's like going through a tunnel of trees. Now as I emerge from the Shorthills, you can see how drastically the landscape changes. It flattens right out, and I call these the Plains of Niagara. So up here on the flatlands, there's lots of cereal crops growing. Soybeans, corn, wheat, etc. Also some dairy and beef, and of course other livestock farming, as well as horse farms. There is some fruit production up here as well, mostly hardier things like apples and pears. Most of the real tender fruit is produced below the escarpment. but there are spots where people are growing peaches and nectarines and cherries on top of the escarpment. So now we're traveling north on Effingham Street, and this is going to be our first descent down the escarpment. This one is pretty gentle, and at the bottom we're going to meet up with Regional Road 69 and then start heading west. But you can see the difference in topography below the escarpment here too, and this is where most of the Niagara tender grapes are grown. You have to be a little careful coming down some of these roads. You can build up quite a bit of momentum, and then all of a sudden you're at a stop sign. So you got to make sure your brakes are in good working order. So now we're headed west on Regional Road 69 and Vineyard to the right, zooming in on a frost fan. And these fans are used in the spring when there's risk of a hard late frost, and they can damage young buds that are developing in vinifera grapes. So those fans will come on automatically and mix the warmer air above with the cooler air below and help prevent some of that frost damage. The escarpment itself consists of Ordovician and Silurian rocks formed from sediments deposited in ancient seas that used to cover the area. This happened about 450 million years ago. It's also known that between 23 and 12,000 years ago, the escarpment was covered with 2 to 3 kilometers of glacial ice. This illustration shows how the escarpment face was formed. So the last inland sea here was a tropical one, deposited lots of plant life and animal life. That turned into dolomitic limestone. It's very hard. The other bodies of water that were before that inland sea left shale and clay and silt deposits. That's very soft. And when it was exposed after the glacier was retreated, the softer material eroded out and the cap rock tumbled down, creating that sloped face of the escarpment. We're approaching ROCKWAY now, and they're redoing the visitor center, so there's no access. I'm going to throw up a picture of the falls though, and a link to a video that will have some other footage of it. And the road ahead is pretty rough, so I'm going to take a left here and start heading south again. There's somebody out spraying their soybeans. Beautiful sky today. I don't know if you can see the netting on these grapes on the left-hand side, but those are to keep the birds off. A lot of people are doing ice wines now, and those grapes stay on the vine until they've had at least 3 good nights in a row of freezing temperatures. So they stay on quite late in the fall, and they need to protect them from the birds. Now we're on 21st Street. That changes into GLEN Road, and this is going down the escarpment. We're going to end up in a place called Jordan Station, but to the west of this road is Balls Falls Conservation Area. And Balls Falls is quite a popular place. Up ahead you can see a trailhead where some cars are parked, so access to the trails. There's an upper falls and a lower falls. I'm going to leave you a really cool video that I found about an MGB rally that took place there several years ago. So click on it, you get MGBs and a trip through the escarpment. This is actually another gradual descent, and when the road straightens out, if I kept going straight, I'd run into Lake Ontario. So there's one final step down till we get below the escarpment again. And when I get down there, I'm just going to turn around, come back up, and then drive through Balls Falls. Lots of great events happen at Balls Falls. There's an old church and an old schoolhouse. Lots of weddings take place there. In the fall at Thanksgiving, they have a huge craft sale that's well attended. Here's a picture of the falls. I'm going to leave you a link to that MGB gathering that happened here several years ago. There's an old schoolhouse, an old church, an old limestone oven, lots of barns, single lane bridge that goes over the creek, and it's not too full today, but it can get pretty torrential. That's just a picture of it, but I'm going to leave you that link that will have some drone footage of the entire place. In the summer, when it dries up pretty hard and we haven't had any rain, the locals call Balls Falls the Testicle Trickle. We're headed south again. There's some fields of sunflowers down here. This is Victoria Avenue. I'm going to take a couple of little detours to show you some other stuff. But again, beautiful day for a drive. Of course, the escarpment being made up of different layers of limestones and shales, there's lots of quarrying activity up here. And so here's one of the big quarries that are doing crushed stone and large armor stones. I got a glimpse of one of our summer visitors. Probably my favorite bird is the turkey vulture. Now heading north down the escarpment on McNeilly Road, and this is the first really twisty descent that we're going to have, and it's also fairly steep. Above the escarpment to the bottom of the escarpment is about a 100-meter drop, and we're doing that 100 meters in probably 120 meters if you were going to go straight down the escarpment. But in this case, of course, we're winding back and forth with these switchbacks. You can see some of the exposed rocks here. At the bottom of this hill, or this next turn, you'll see a trailhead for the Bruce Trail, and it's a walking trail that goes all the way from Niagara Falls to Tobermory in northern Ontario, and there's lots of offshoots of that trail, and if you're interested in hiking, it's a wonderful resource for that. Now we're coming back, we're looking at Hamilton now, and we're just edging into Stony Creek. If you go back and look at this footage, you'll be able to see when we're at the top, you get a good glimpse of Lake Ontario, and you can see actually where the escarpment continues all around Hamilton and then turns. We're heading east on Regional Road 81. Now we're turning south onto 51 Road, which is really just about a few miles from where we came down. And you can sort of stitch your way up and down the escarpment, going up and down for miles and miles and miles and miles. It makes a good drive for a Sunday afternoon. I think those are LED headlights that are flashing. The camera picks them up because they're flashing all the time. We can't see it, but the camera sees it. So this road is well maintained. I'm always impressed with the MGB and how really good of a hill climber it is. The gearing ratio must be just right for that. Some nice turns up here, and at the end switch back to get you up above the escarpment again. So back up on top of the escarpment, heading east on Ridge Road. And my next descent is going to be Wolverton Road, and so that's just a few miles from where we came up. And on this oblique angled air photo, it looks like it goes straight down, but it's really a more gradual descent. But it is steep, and you pick up a lot of momentum going down this hill, so you want to make sure you can get your gears right and your brakes are working really well. Incidentally, where these roads go up and down the escarpment, there's usually a park or a conservation area close by, usually a waterfall feature, and of course lots of trails. So if you like that kind of stuff, pick yourself up a map and you can go out exploring for the day. Braking is especially important down here because you're going along and then all of a sudden there's a stop sign and you don't have a lot of time to react if you don't know it's coming. So we were headed east again on 81 and now turning south again to go up Mountain Road. And of course, again, it was only a few miles to get to this road. These rocks that you see on the side here have all been placed there. They're not part of the escarpment. They're just there for erosion control and to hold back the soil and the trees, I guess. They probably all originally came from the escarpment, though, probably out of that quarry that we drove by earlier. All these big trucks coming down the road, I always remember as a kid growing up hearing stories of gravel trucks and cement trucks losing their brakes coming down these hills and crashing into houses and going through intersections. You don't hear that much anymore, but we used to hear those stories all the time. Now heading, of course, we went east again above the escarpment for a few miles, and now that we're heading down on Mountain Street this time, not Mountain Road, and this is a nice gentle descent. At the bottom here, we're going to head east again on 81 and drive through some of the towns and villages along the way. You'll see lots of vineyards, lots of fruit stands, and real popular destination. Lots of winery tours and events going on along this road. Of course, before the Queen Elizabeth Way, this was the road from Niagara to Hamilton and eventually Toronto. So at one time a very, very important road. Again, vineyards with the nets ready for ice wine production. Lots of offshoot roads going up the escarpment to farms. Well, we're approaching the end of our drive for today. We're making a descent into the Jordan Valley. Right north of here, the same creek runs through the Jordan Valley as ran through Balls Falls. That's called the 20-mile creek. We also have the 16-mile creek and the 20-mile creek, and those are all named for how far west they are from the Niagara River. So this is the 20-mile creek. We're 20 miles west of the Niagara River, and of course at the head of the Niagara River is Niagara Falls. There's a great little cafe down at the bottom here. Great, lots of locals go there for breakfast. And there's also a flea market here, and I'm not sure what day they run the flea market. I don't know if it's Saturday or Sunday, but you can see all the stalls set up on the right hand side here. So as we make this final ascent, I just want to thank you for watching. I hope you found it enjoyable, maybe a little bit entertaining, maybe a little bit informative, but I really do appreciate you folks with the comments that you leave and any suggestions or questions you have. I really like reading those. So until next time, octagonally yours. Oh, one more thing. I always forget to ask you to like and subscribe. Again, thanks for watching.